What are you up to? Where are you?
G'day, guys. Yeah, just down at Boston
Backyard.
Centennial Park. Yeah, as you can see, Mick lent me a little bit of money out of his last contract negotiation, so I've just tidied up, just put a new deck in, and she's looking outstanding at the moment. But just got the little bloke down at Boston Centennial Park in Glebe, just kicking the footy and
watch out
trying
for
to
kicking the
stay up
footy
and down
around.
a little bit.
We'll just
I think you're allowed. We've been social distancing, Braith. We have been. There's a few people around here, but everyone's definitely keeping well and truly a safe space.
Nice.
I'll tell you the game that works hoops with the kids. Now you can social distance. Remember the old Frisbee? Yeah, 10, 15 metres apart. Get the Frisbee out, mate, with the little fella.
Yeah, mad if you don't, mate. Mad if you don't.
Is that your dog in the background, mate? Watch out there, mate. Watch out. Watch out.
He's jumped the fence.
Hoops, we've just been talking about these new restrictions that have come in for the players, the new rules of engagement. What's been your read on the way that's been received by a lot of the players since that was put forward on Friday?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jess. Look, I think like everybody, the world's changed a hell of a lot in the course of the last 7 days, fortnight. And so all of the players who I've spoken to are just adjusting with the times. We weren't accustomed to social distancing. We weren't accustomed to self-isolating prior to the last couple of weeks. So it's different because, I go back to, we were out there for that opening game of the season between Penrith and the Roosters. There was 8,000 people there. Players were high-fiving and hooting and hollering as they like to after scoring tries, and the Panthers scored that epic round one upset against the reigning premiers. But times have changed a lot since then, and so the players who I've spoken to, they just say, well, it is what it is, and they have to adjust and accept that is now a way of life.
Hoops, a big day for the clubs tomorrow and also the players. We understand that the Commission will meet tomorrow to try and sign off on this new agreement in terms of the financials of the game. Peter V'landys has done incredible things, not only for New South Wales racing, but in terms of fighting and keeping the game alive while it could through this pandemic. Where did he pull that $7 million from that's going to get this over the line?
Well, I think the reality of it is, Mick, I think he's had to trim it out of NRL headquarters, and it wouldn't have been an easy job. And I'm sure that there are some nervous people situated at Moore Park as we speak at the moment, but there has been a view from within NRL clubland that the NRL are spending far too much money at headquarters. And so as a result of that, I think Peter's gone through the books. Certainly that's an element of it. Look, there's a big story brewing at the moment, guys. It hasn't really hit the headlines yet about the NRL Players Retirement Fund. There's supposed to be $30 million in that fund at the moment. But as it sits right here, right now, there's only $20 million in there. And that's because the NRL haven't put the money that they were supposed to for the last 2.5 years into that fund.
Wow.
They've been using it for operational costs and for day-to-day capital. So it is an issue. I know that it's angered a lot of people in the NRL clubland, and I think that that'll certainly be a big part of the conversation tomorrow when they start to thrash out and go over all the finances.
Hoops, that's massive. That's a huge story, and that's one that you're right, will fracture the relationship between, I would think, the players and the game.
Absolutely.
Like they're in negotiations now with it went from 87% pay cut to 75%. We expect the players to walk in the door and take that pay cut, but also now thinking that the NRL hasn't even put their money where it should be. I mean, that's incredible, Hoops.
It is. Look, it's staggering, and there's a couple of chief executives that keep referring to that Warren Buffett line. He's the US business tycoon. Sometimes it takes the tide going out to figure out who's been skinny dipping. And in the case of the NRL, they really have been caught with their pants down in this particular scenario. So, look, it's going to continue to evolve over the next couple of days. It is a big story. Like I say, there are a number of people making a lot of noise about it in clubland at the moment. Why? When that money was supposed to be set aside and there should be $30 million in that player retirement fund, why have we not put money in it for the last two and a little bit
Who's
years?
accountable, Hoops? Like, someone's got to fall on their sword here. This is...
Someone,
it's got to be... Yeah, it's a fair question, but it's got to be headquarters. It's got to be, the NRL executive team. They're the ones who are charged with running the game. And certainly I know a lot of the club chief executives at the moment are simply shaking their heads and saying, well, how could that be allowed to happen, a situation like that? And then there's other elements of the business arm where they've invested, I think it's $71 million in the digital arm of the business. It's very debatable whether they're ever going to recoup any of that type of money back. So
That
certainly,
was always a fascinating one, wasn't it? Given the relationship that they had and the money that they relied on, from Fox Sports and News Limited and obviously Channel 9, like that they were that's their two massive sources of income, yet they went and built this digital arm that just seemed...
Now completely in
it's lunacy,
competition with
Mick.
us.
You're spot on, guys. It's commercial suicide. It's lunacy. They looked at the AFL. The AFL was doing it. The AFL, look, Sydney and Melbourne are very different cities. And in the AFL, it has worked and there has been a degree of success around it. In the NRL, I would suggest that it's been a complete waste of money. They've set fire to, as I said, $71 million already. It'll be another 20 this year. In total, they forecasted that they were going to put 150 million all up over the course of 6 years into it. Now, the plan was it was supposed to turn into $1 billion business. The only problem is nobody's going to want to buy it. So there's a basic premise in business. You've got to have a buyer and you've got to have a seller. Well, even if they did want to sell it, I don't think there'd be too many people queuing up with a checkbook to try and buy that particular arm of the business. So, look, that has certainly created a lot of divide as well amongst the power brokers in the game, out in the other rival NRL clubs. They're not happy at the moment. They're really aggrieved about the state of the game's finances. And to Braith's question about who needs to be held accountable, look, I think we are going to see a number of heads roll out of NRL headquarters as a result of this.
Hoops, story in the Telegraph today, $100 million survival package. Bart Campbell from the Melbourne Storm, a director. What's that all about, Hoops?
Yeah, so look, obviously the NRL and some of the power brokers in Clubland, Braith, are just attempting to source every piece of working capital that they can, given the financial state of the game, and just have a variety of options on the table. That is one option. I think Peter V'landys was quoted in the story. He wasn't saying carte blanche that they're definitely going to take it up, but certainly they'll listen to Bart's perspective and the terms of the deal, have a look at it. If it works for them, then perhaps they may go down that road. I know that they're still in negotiations with the government and a variety of other sources about trying to shore up the game's finances. The number one priority for Peter V'landys is making sure that the players, who are the showpiece element of the game, get as much money as possible given these horrendous unforeseen circumstances. He's always said that's been his top priority. It's fascinating that he's now jumped into these negotiations with the Rugby League Players Association. Initially, it was Todd Greenberg and Tony Crawford, the Chief Financial Officer. Now Peter V'landys has jumped in, tried to grab the wool by the horns and source more money. He's managed to find that. So there are going to be a lot of developments happening at NRL headquarters over the next couple of months.
Yeah, we know tomorrow will probably be D-Day for all of that. That'll be the big story tomorrow. Hoops, I'm so interested to know, when you look back on the week that we've just had and all of the news that's broken, the biggest stories that have been at the forefront of the game, what surprised you most? What's the one story that's happened that really shocked you?
It's all a little bit stranger than fiction at the moment, isn't it? Just the world that we're living in. It's just changing day to day on an hourly basis at such a drastic and bizarre rate. Look, I think the timing from a rugby league perspective, I'd have to say I feel for Tyson Frizzell. I feel like he got hit with a steamroll by a cement truck a little bit in relation to the announcement of his contract and the fact that he wants to go and join the Newcastle Knights next season. Obviously, that deal isn't able to be registered at the moment. The NRL has said, no, we can't register it because the state of finances are all over the shop and we don't know exactly where the salary cap is going to sit next season. So I must say, I feel for Tyson. I don't think he really wanted to be making that announcement at this point in time. I think his hand was forced and he basically had to show his cards. But I did find that one, the timing of that, and I know he then since turned to social media and clarified on Instagram that he understands everybody else around the nation's doing it extremely tough at the moment, and certainly the timing was not of his doing.
Hey, Hoops, just quickly, mate, take you back to something that you mentioned that was really important. You mentioned the word skinny dipping. Mate, I know you like to get the kid off. Mate, mate, what are the restrictions there in the harbour, mate?
I look like I've slid a pound of salt at the moment, so I've got all the gyms and everything closed. Exercise has gone on the back burner. So, yeah, it'd be horrendous, Michael, if we wanted to go down that road.
Oh, trust you. Hoops,
The
thanks.
nobility of an
Hoops just come
ocean
up with
liner.
one of the biggest yarns of the week.
Absolutely.
That is
That's
the case.
a massive story.
Massive.
Honestly, if the NRL have undercut and taken money from the Players' Retirement Fund,
Incredible.
this will...
Because the fund would generate interest too, right?
Absolutely.
So if it's 15, what was it, $15 million short?
But Brate, you might have players
Yeah.
there. Like you imagine Cameron Smith, right? Who's obviously well set up at the back end of his career. Darius Boyd and other, they're about to retire and they're counting on this money that they've been promised, and then all of a sudden they get to D-Day and retire.